So tell us who you are, gentlemen, and tell us your roles.
Okay. Oh, you can go first, Christian.
Well, thanks, Brad. Even though I think you should go first because you're the author, but I am Cristian Aluas. I'm a freelance illustrator and author as well. And I worked with Brad on his Benton Barbarian comic. We did 3 issues together. He's the creator and writer, and I was the illustrator.
Excellent. Okay, I guess that's my cue. I am Brad and Brad Paulson. I'm the creator and writer of Benton Barbarian. It was a great time working with Christian. And Cody, it's great to meet you. You're doing the Lord's work by helping out independent comic book artists and writers. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I don't think you said, how did y'all two meet? How did Brad?
It was one of those like it was one of those sites. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was Guru, right?
Yeah, I believe it was Guru. I bid on his project because I was looking for freelance work. Because as you may know, I wrote a book called "It's a Living: Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century." So yeah, I was freelancing. I still do freelancing, and it was a couple of years ago, or a few years ago actually, that I bid on Brad's project to do initially the first issue, and then we just maintained the relationship, and I worked on the second and third.
So we plan on a 4th?
Yeah, well, I will be, I'll talk to Christian about that after the interview here. So
all right. Are you in comic shops?
Not yet, no. Well, I did put in a couple indie shops when I was in LA in Burbank. Right now it's on Comixology.
Okay. And is that, what is that, print demand? Print?
Yeah, it's I think there was another one called Indie Planet. The first one was print on demand for, but Comixology is just like the regular digital one. I think like Comixology maybe, well, they got owned by Amazon, and I haven't, I think they're going through a little bit of a change right now, but yeah, absolutely the same.
Yeah, they're acquired by KDP, and actually they're part of Kindle in a way, but they're part of KDP. So you could, when you're on KDP platform now, you could publish Kindles, paperbacks, hardbacks, and Comixology comics. Pretty much everything. Everything is under one umbrella.
That's pretty cool. I just found out that Amazon has their own print on demand service.
Yeah, that's what that is. Kindle Direct Publishing is Amazon.
Oh, I thought Kindle was only the digital part. I didn't know they actually did physical.
No, I do this actually every day. That's what I was doing most of today, in fact. So when you convert a Kindle, like you take a PDF and you have to convert it to a Kindle, or sometimes you can take a Word if it's like written text, and then you convert it to Kindle. You have options now in the Kindle Creator app that's on your computer, where you could select a digital comic. And when you select the digital comic, it lets you highlight the panels, like, and the sizes, you know, as you navigate panel to panel, like Comixology. So you get to control that. Well, actually, I think it's like handing off the work that they were doing for a while. So before you would submit to Comixology and they would do that for you. And now I think it's more in the hands of the creator that they can kind of coordinate how the panels are read. But I'm sure they have a say in it, because if it's a really uncomfortable way for readers to engage with the product, they would give you feedback.
Yeah. That is what I heard that was different about it, is they don't do like because it was before you could just kind of like follow it, just, you know, it's kind of like scan, but I heard that's what they got away from. So yeah, sometimes I pick up regular comics after I was on Comixology, and it was like, how do I push this thing and get it to scan forward? I was like, oh, it's a regular comic. Okay.
So Brad, where did you get inspiration for the Benton Barbarian?
Well, it's basically like a parody of Conan the Barbarian. So it's a parody of Conan the Barbarian and the fantasy genre in general, and my love of dwarves. But Conan the Barbarian, I've been a huge fan of Conan for a long time. Those early Marvel ones and the Marvel ones, and then the early Dark Horse runs are just fantastic, and the movies as well too. It was basically like I wanted to do like a version of Conan, but with a dwarf. and I wanted to have and I wanted to do like something wacky and just a parody of that whole like what you would see in the 80s in general. And a lot of it was sort of like the look for it, the inspiration of that was sort of a mix between Gru and then Gru the Wanderer, which is also one of my all-time favorite comics. And then also like the Ralph Bakshi movies of the 80s. So if you see like Wizards, Fire and Ice, although Frank Frazetta did the layout for those, but more specifically like Wizards, that sort of look, like that real cool, like specialized stylistic look that he had in there, but like kind of like hyper cartoonish, but like with a little bit of detail thrown in. But it's very unique. And Christian pretty much nailed that, like right as soon as I sent it over. He knew what I was talking about right away.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I definitely am familiar with the genre.
Yeah. Yeah, Christian's like, oh, I'm a big fan of Conan and Gru and everything too as well. So yeah, he knew right away.
It's generational.
Yeah.
Do you just have the single 3 issues, or did you collect 1 through 3 in a trade yet?
No, not that. In fact, if I was smarter, I probably would have just tried to do a graphic novel right away because I think that would have been an easier approach than trying to just do separate ones, because as time goes by, it kind of loses momentum. And but anyways, I sort of learned my lesson on that. I think that's what I would do next time, is just trying to do a graphic, because I originally had 6 of them planned out. I wrote like 6 scripts for them to be like to be like a graphic novel, but also work as individual ones. But from what I've been reading lately, regular graphic novels sell a lot better than like the regular floppies anyways.
Yeah. Okay. It's like manga now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, maybe 4, 5, and 6 can come out in a trade.
Yeah. Ideally, yeah.
Do you kickstart these, or do you fund them yourself?
No, I self-financed them, and so that's why. Yeah, so that's why it took a while. So, and then there's got to be for the other ones to finish, because I would like to finish out that story arc, because it's but I have like tons of idea. It could pretty much go like, because when you're parodying the fantasy genre, you have lots of stuff to pull from. You know, you could, because I put in some like elements of Harry Potter and the other ones, but basically keeping it like centralized on like the kind of like alternate Conan universe that it is, but like with kind of like bizarre humor. Now Conan sort of taps into that weirdness a little bit, but it's not comedic, but like doing like a comedic version of Conan. You know, like the comedic parts you would get in Conan is like in like Conan the Destroyer, when he's teaching Grace Jones how to use a sword, and he's like, "You fighting with a toothpick like that?" And then he takes up his sword, he's like, "Use a real man's weapon." Like, but kind of like stuff like that I laughed at, and I was like, "You just make this like more like surrealistic and accentuate the comedy of it, but just like super weird comedy." And I dug that because I watched your video on it, and I was like, "Oh, Cody, he gets it right away. He gets that humor right away."
Yeah.
It's my type of humor. The ass slaves was pretty funny. I laughed, like literally laughed out loud. Yeah. Was this your first comic book ever? Like, do you have a second book?
Well, I did one called Hard Boiled Ape earlier that I did on Comixology, that I put on Comixology, and then and that was the one I did before. So it was that one, and then this one here. It was about right around the same time though.
All right. When did these come out?
In front of me. Several years ago. I think like the Hard Boiled Ape was like, I think right around 2018. And I believe it was the same with I think Benton. First issue of that was right around then as well too. Between 2016 and 2018, yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to newcomers that want to make comics?
Make a graphic novel right away. Don't make the same mistake I did.
But you say the word right away.
Well, no, Christian's right. Because what you find out when you're first getting into it is that it's an incredibly time-consuming process. Not nearly as much for the writer as it is for the artist. But so especially like when everybody's like juggling different jobs on the side like that as well too. But yeah, that's what, just from like what I've been reading on it, and especially how like kind of like how comics are nowadays, I would say go with a graphic novel, or go with the one shot. Do like a one shot that's like between 20 to 48 pages or something like that, or do a graphic novel. I think it would be ideally just easier to test out with a one shot first, because I had a friend that was making a comic and he wanted to do, it was like a Vietnam zombie one. And I was like, he goes, "I want to make like a graphic novel." I was like, "You should probably just try with her." He goes, "I want to do like a bunch of individual issues." I was like, "Well, you should just probably try to do one shot, and then kind of like see how that goes. Then you could always spin off after it, but at least you'd have one completed story arc.
Right. I mean, did it turn out successful for him?
I think it turned out decently for him. He ended up he was like a low budget movie guy, so he had some people he was able to get out with, but he had to end up funding it himself because he tried to do the Kickstarter thing. But the Kickstarter thing is, unfortunately, you have to have like a pretty big name before you can try to raise financing for it. Because I guess you could do Indiegogo and try and get a little bit, but it's just like building stuff. That's like why I think it's and I'm doing like a YouTube channel right now where I talk about like indie movies. That's kind of like my other passion is indie movies, interviewing indie filmmakers and stuff. It's called Dead Harvey. And on that one, sorry, I forgot the first part of that question there. Sorry, I blanked out.
No, you were telling us about your YouTube channel.
Yes.
You said that you interview indie film creators.
Yeah. Interview indie film creators. It's called Dead Harvey, and that's a YouTube channel. Oh, I know where I was going with this. Basically, I think it's important to get a following. So we have about 1,700 people on Instagram right now. We're getting a following, and I'm trying to build that up so that we can eventually do Kickstarters in the future or whatnot. Because that's kind of what I learned is that when you're trying to do Kickstarters, you got to have a name, or you got to have some other stuff behind it, because otherwise it's a kind of a hard work, or you're just gonna have to self-finance it. That's what my friend had to end up doing, is self-financing, even though he knew a bunch of people out there. But
okay. What social medias are you gentlemen on? Just the normal three?
Just mostly Instagram and Facebook, but generally just concentrate on Instagram.
Okay. Not on TikTok or anything?
No, TikTok is this new fangled technology I haven't monkeyed around with yet.
What do you think, Christian?
I was just asking if there was a separate Instagram name for the Bantam, which I didn't know about.
Oh, I don't have a separate Bantam Instagram one on there. I did kind of I started one for the comic Captain Pigeon Comics that was on there. Kind of started that one for a bit. But then that's for the Instagram one is Captain Pigeon Comics, and then the regular Instagram for the movies is called Dead Harvey.
Okay. And Christian, what is a common mistake that you see people make when they send you a script?
Well, that's a great question. Formatting helps, and I think Brad's stories were pretty tight. His scripts, I could tell that he read through them a couple times. And I deal with a lot of beginner indie creators. It's kind of a niche that I developed over the years. And some of them never wrote a script before. And in some cases, I help them with the script. I just say look, just they'll approach me for a project, an idea that they haven't written anything yet. And so I'm patient with them. I said, just, send it to me in whatever format you have. And then, I'll try to make sense of it, but usually I'll have a conversation with them to have arcs within every episode,
Right.
So I think Brad has a better grip on that. Although this series is very episodic, so incidents happen, it just moves scene to scene. But generally, each comic has an arc, whether I think the first one, by the end he's trapped in a castle, and then by the second issue he escapes, so there's there's good transitions between episodes. So yeah, I didn't have any trouble with Brad's, and what I usually encounter, like I said, is people that don't proofread. It's very easy for, especially an indie creator, to just be so happy that they finished the script, and then they hand out whatever really rough draft they have initially, and the first draft is never the best one. It's never any good, usually. Actually, always, unless maybe it's only later in a practiced writer's career where you can have a decent script, but at a first go. But the way to do that is to plan it extensively beforehand, to kind of break it down scene by scene, and then you type out a script, So yeah, so it's just it's the roughness of the scripts. Those are the challenges.
Okay. So, dead or alive, who would y'all like to make a comic book with?
Oh, damn, that's a good question. Damn, that's a really good question. God, I think that's kind of like asking like what your favorite movie is. There's so many different there's so many different options for that. Do you mean like any? Well, I guess I would have to say like Frank Miller would pretty much be the ultimate dream, or Stan Lee, or well, I guess it would be Stan Lee first and then Frank Miller.
Okay.
And Frank Miller, would he be dead or alive in your scenario?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Would he be dead or alive? It doesn't matter. I mean, if he could come back as a ghost and talk to me, that's what happened to Robert E. Like, you ever seen that movie, like This Whole Wide World? It's kind of it's weird because it's like a romance, but it's about Robert E. Howard, who wrote Conan, and he's like going crazy, and he's just sitting there, and like the ghost of Conan is talking to him when he's writing. It's pretty awesome. I was like, oh damn, I wish I could get inspiration like that. Well, yeah, so he was talking to the fictional character he was talking to. So
okay. Is there anything y'all want to say before we go?
Well, just thanks so much for having us, and and if it's really cool that your channel's out there, like especially since the comics industry is like in rough waters right now, so it needs all the help it can get. But I think that we are going to see, I mean, because you like look at the big studios right now, like Marvel and DC's and Dark Horse and everything. They are they're not selling as well, and then like the stores aren't carrying them as much, and everything's just sort of chaotic right now, and that sort of started around COVID. So I think we are going to see sort of like a resurgence with indie comics. You notice that like when people get a name and they do those Kickstarters, like those comics like Berserk and everything do really well. So I think there is definitely hope for it, and I think we will see like more momentum going with indie comics.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brad. And
Okay.
Do you want to say anything before we go, Christian?
No. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Cody.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen.
What? You mean you haven't subscribed to Comicchatauthority? Oh, come on. Subscribe already. What are you waiting for? It's no big deal. Like, man, don't forget to tell him to hit that like button. Yeah, that too. Just subscribe.